I'm your host, Bill Barty, and talking about the Carolina outdoor activities that are occurring beyond the Carolina outdoor borders, within the Carolina outdoor borders, and the people that are helping make outdoor things happen is what we are here to do. The trout streams of North Carolina are a huge part of the economy in the state. They generate millions of dollars in revenue from fishing licenses, permits, gear sales, and guide services, not to mention the money spent in tourism and the impact on property values in the fishing destination communities. With that being said, Jake Rash is the Cold Water Research Coordinator for the North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission. He assists with the coordination of applied research and the management of the state's trout resources. He is also the chair of the Eastern Brook Trout Joint Venture. We welcome him back to the Carolina Outdoors this week. Jake, good to have you back.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Just so I can get this out of the way, you are a fantastic resource for not only the Carolina Outdoors, but for North Carolina in general, especially as we talk about what we're going to talk about. And Jake, in previous episodes here on the program, you talked about this. Back in 2023, it was calculated that each dollar anglers spend to fish for mountain trout in North Carolina returns almost $2 to the economy, which was a $1.38 billion impact. That was all according to NC Wildlife. Then a year ago, we all know what happens in 2024, disaster strikes. Thankfully, Jake Rash, your voice was one of the ones heard discussing about the things that you did know and also what you didn't know in this real-time fluid situation of a catastrophe of people, property, and resource. With 1 year under our belt, Jake, I'm going to ask you, what do you know now? What do we know now about the resource and the changes that have occurred, especially in Western North Carolina for us recreational anglers?
Yeah, it definitely was an unprecedented situation with Hurricane Helene and the impacts that it brought to the whole region, like you said, to the resources and definitely to the communities. And I think maybe one of the things that I take from it and have learned and definitely appreciate more is just resiliency. It's hard to look past the communities and the people and how everybody's pulled together to you're working with with those folks, your towns, your counties, the state, your neighbors, all that sort of stuff. And so there's that element to it, and to see that continue to persevere, but tied to that also are the natural resources themselves that are kind of so important to all those communities as well. And so that theme of resiliency kind of goes through those trout waters also, where we've been doing a lot of work to work with those partners on the stock trout resources that we manage, and to make sure that where possible those could come back online, and working with those community leaders and points of contact when they're ready and those resources were fit for us to resume stocking, that we were able to do that as soon as possible. So our staff really worked closely with them, and so the stock trout resources continue to come back online. All the delayed harvest waters were able to be stocked this fall, which was amazing. And the wild trout, the naturally reproducing, self-sustaining populations, we've been doing a ton of monitoring on those as well. We're probably over 200 or so samples for this year, and what's amazing, just drilling in on native brook trout, everywhere that we knew there were brook trout and went back to look for them, we still found fish. There may be fewer, but they're still there. And so, thinking about what we've learned and maybe appreciate a little bit more is just the overall resiliency of the resource and the communities and people that are around them and depend on them. It's just been an interesting couple of months, but really feel appreciative to be just a small piece of what's happening in a large group of folks to have trout fishing and continue to make it to be as good as it can be in North Carolina.
Well, and resiliency, we'll stay on that theme. And just for our listeners out there, of course, NC Wildlife manages the Public Mountain Trout Water Program. What that means is there are approximately 5,400 miles and 2,600 acres of trout waters that take up or are in 26 western counties. There's 6 distinct classifications that fall under that. There's catch and release, there's delayed harvest, there's hatchery supported, special regs, wild trout waters, and wild trout / natural bait waters. Staying with bringing people to the resources, Jake, can you talk about, we'll talk about last year. Last year really to me was amazing that the waters were stocked at all. And what went into the conversation with what was stocked and what wasn't stocked was not just fish available, but some of it was safety to volunteers and to employees who helped stock those waters. There were some road concerns, so some of the waters weren't stocked then because of that. How about this year? I heard you say that all the waters, delayed harvest waters, were going to be stocked and were stocked. Are there still roadway concerns and safety concerns for volunteers and employees who help make all that possible?
Yeah, you're right. So much went into those decisions, and to the point of even being able to stock. It just gets to the unbelievable staff that we have that are really, really good and are really devoted at what they do to help grow those fish and get them out there. So I bet you're going to ask me about some of the hatchery projects and how that came through. So I'll save that for later. But we made it through challenges on that side, and then being able to work with those communities to make sure it was safe, that roads were open, and that it was, an opportunity that could be realized because of all those things. And so those have come along, and certainly, I can't speak to every road and every situation.
Right.
But if we're stocking it, then we've coordinated with those areas and communities and at least able to get the fish in. But folks, like anywhere or anytime, and even in different years, just always being aware of your environment and situation. And my motto is always know before you go, whether it's regarding the post storm or maybe a different year. But the more you can prepare and take a look at what roads are open, or trails, particularly some areas like on the U.S. Forest Service, some of the roads and trails are still undergoing quite a bit of work, and not so much for the delayed harvest fisheries, but that might impact your trip if you're going to look for wild trout. So just think about where you're going and check out the resources that are available for those areas, and that way you can do all your planning at home and not show up on the stream and be surprised.
We've got Jake Rash on the program, Cold Water Research Coordinator for NC Wildlife Resource Commission. He's a scientist, a biologist, and he keeps us abreast of everything going on. You can learn more, of course, ncwildlife.gov/trout to being prepared for the waters that you are going to fish this fall, this winter. We enjoy fishing year round. And Jake, I'm glad you mentioned, I mentioned it that you wear a hat as the chair of the Eastern Brook Trout Joint Venture, and you mentioned that where wild trout live, where these brook trout live, there have been fish seen. So that means that species is ongoing and reproducing, and we're glad about that. Just for a point of clarification, are those wild trout ever, is a stream ever shocked and trout relocated to a stream that they would be native to? And is that something that's going on now in 2025?
Yeah, we actually do quite a bit of that work. Brook trout are the only trout species native to North Carolina, so they're really important. Not only biologically, but socially, culturally, they're the fish that
Right.
have been here for forever and so many generations growing up fishing for. So we put a lot of focus into helping those populations stay healthy, but then putting them back where they're supposed to be, like you're mentioning, and we do that work. And this year we're taking a pause just to save some stress on some of the populations where we move fish from, but we're the way we do that work, it's really calculated. We use a lot of information to make sure we're moving the right fish to the right place. It's not. It seems simple, but it's not just going and grabbing fish because we want to make sure that we're not moving fish that may have hatchery lineage that have been on the landscape for a while, and so we're making sure we're moving like actual, true, native, North Carolina brook trout around, and that's something that will really pick back up again next year, and honestly, that's an annual thing that we do, and so that's. You may have seen us. We put some information out asking folks not to move fish around. I know it seems like you might be helping, but in reality, it's a potential way to move diseases around. We test the fish before we move them to make sure we're not introducing diseases anywhere, and also, like I mentioned, to make sure we're moving the right fish to the right places. So. If folks have questions about that, we're always happy to chat about it. But yeah, we're always thinking about how to have brook trout be in the waters that they're supposed to be in.
Hey, with that, let me just ask you, because oftentimes we skip over this, but how about other critters that live in the trout stream, whether it be salamanders, hellbenders, mussels, frogs? How did those guys make out in the path of the storm?
Yeah, I'm probably not the best.
Just to put you on the spot.
speak to all those, but I think we have staff that work on all those critters, right, and try to understand how they're doing, and a lot of that work is still ongoing, and honestly too, this. We're a year out, but next year we'll know even more and be able to see these trends across different populations to see how they're doing and see how they respond. And so I'm thinking about trout. We've done a lot of work this year and we're optimistic, but really it's going to be next year to see how these populations rebound. Which they will, as long as we have the habitat to do so. So it's really unfortunate what happened, but we're continuing to learn. Kind of back to your first question about what have we learned. This is kind of new to everybody, so we're working our way through it and learning what we can.
Well, here it comes. Jake Rash is on the Carolina Outdoors. We always love getting him on. It was just a few years ago that the North Carolina General Assembly granted $20 million to help fund a major renovation to the Bobby N. Setzer State Fish Hatchery. Jake, just so our listeners know, the North Carolina fish hatcheries produce and stock about 1 million brook, rainbow, and brown trout each year in normal years. Then the storm happened and it knocked off not Setzer, but it got Armstrong. What is the schedule and what is happening with our hatcheries now in 2025, and what's the plan moving forward with Armstrong, with Setzer, with any of the other hatcheries as we step forward into the present and the future of North Carolina trout and trout stocking?
Yeah, that was really one of the with so many things with the storm, but the impacts to the hatchery program and the planned renovations. I mean, I noted earlier how amazing our production folks are, and this is a testament to it. And they, last year was supposed to be when we were working on the Setzer renovation, which is our largest facility, but Helene actually just destroyed our Armstrong facility, so we had to pause that renovation. All of this year, 2025, has been spent repairing Armstrong, which it's back online, and by the end of the year will be all those renovations will hopefully be complete, which means now we can start the transition back to over a year ago, getting into the Setzer renovation, and so that's planned to get started here in 2026. And it just one of the things that I think that folks may not realize just how interdependent these facilities are and the program is, and kind of you think about stocking fish, and forgive me if I've used this analogy before, it's kind of like a Rubik's Cube where you're lining up all the colors on a side, and there's these different factors that have to come into place because you're working across space and time. It takes time to grow the fish and then get them in the right condition and get them out. And so you can imagine how that's orchestrated across those 26 counties, like you mentioned earlier, to make it happen. So all that to say is we're looking forward to this Setzer renovation getting started like we planned a year ago, but it's slated to get going, and it's going to be one that will really bring that facility to state-of-the-art status.
Is that a spring 26 start, or is it going to be summer?
It's going to be winter.
Okay.
Ideally, so it'll be something that starts here within the next couple months, ideally, and it'll take place over a couple years.
Right.
And then there'll be, ultimately, obviously impacts to the numbers of fish that we stock, but everything will get stocked during the renovation. And we'll have more information about the specifics, exact percentage changes and those sort of things here in the first of the year when we can really dial in those numbers. But the expectation would be to really see the normal numbers, if you will, air quotes, normal numbers back by sometime late 2028 or so, and then see the real big fish and full sizes that people are used to into 2029. But during the renovation, which will happen in 26 and 2027, again, we'll still be stocking. Everything will still be stocked. We're just going to have to change some of the frequency and the numbers, but we'll have that information out to everybody here, hopefully in the early part of 2026.
Again, ncwildlife.gov/trout. A lot of information that is right there, including about the hatcheries, including stocking schedules, including regulations. It's all right there. Wow. Nonetheless, Jake Rash, it sounds like we're moving forward. This is a positive conversation after, of course, the tragedy a year ago. But wow, it sounds like we're marching forward. And thank you for your work and your communication, and always for jumping on the Carolina Outdoors and being with us.
Well, you're welcome. I appreciate the opportunity, and I think you're right. We are moving forward, and we're excited. It's a big project, obviously, but that's a big facility that's so important to the program, and so being able to get it modernized. I mean, it started operation in the 50s, so it's time. So
Well,
it'll pay off in the long run.
Well, as we started this conversation, it is a big deal in North Carolina. The economic impact alone for what it means to this economy across the board. So the investment is there, whether it's the time and the money to make it all better and continuing being a resource for us here and across the country for people that come, and the world really, that come to North Carolina to enjoy our recreational fishing. Jake Rash, thank you for being on the program.